Hi, Amanda. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Of course. Thanks for inviting me.
No, absolutely. So I'll get right to it. How have you been during a pandemic? Is this your first one?
It is my first pandemic. I can't think of anything in my life that has predated this other than people my age, like 9/11 is the only thing we can think of that was as significant of a shift, but it was just so different than this. I lived in Chicago at that time. So yeah, week 7, almost done with week 7 of being inside of my home most of the time. Yeah, it's different.
For sure. And like for my sake, I'm seeing way too much of my dog, and I'm getting to this point where it's like he's getting sick of me now. Um,
Oh,
I know. It's getting real weird here, between the dog and I.
are you in like your childhood home or in your apartment or?
Yeah, I'm in my childhood home. I'm the oldest of four.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so everyone's home. The four of us and my parents and the two dogs.
Aw.
So it's one big family, at the moment. So we're still learning a lot about each other, and there are, like every family, there are good days and bad.
I'm sure. I
Yeah.
can't imagine being with my father during this time, so I
You,
can only imagine.
I think my dad was the first one to experience the cabin fever. He started like growing a goatee and like started growing his hair out a little bit more. He never does that.
Yeah.
And it was getting a little weird, for him. So I thank my mom for that. But yeah. So you are correct me if I'm wrong, the senior education manager at Steppenwolf Theatre, correct?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Great. So what does that job entail, and how much of it has, I don't maybe changed during a pandemic?
That's a great question. So I have been affiliated with Steppenwolf since 2006,
Okay.
and I had primarily been working as a teaching artist and leading the teaching artist trainings. And I just came on to the administrative side in January
Mhm.
because previous to that, I had been working as a director of education at a children's theater company called Emerald City, which closed
Mhm.
in December, January. So it kind of worked out that this senior manager position was open. And so what I was starting to do, Steppenwolf does 2 shows a year for young adults, meaning like 8th through 12th grade. And the person in my position works with our cohort of teaching artists and facilitates the training for them around that production, which happened to be I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. That's a young adult novel by Erica L. Sanchez that was adapted by Chicago playwright Isaac Gomez.
Mhm.
And so we explore the play together over 3 days, and there's a really specific type of work that we practice called aesthetic education. And so I'm in charge of that training, the curriculum building that we take into schools, and then all of our partnership with classroom teachers. And then there's like data collection that goes on with that too, like getting teaching artists everything from the curriculum to the supplies through wrapping up that experience. Now, what happened was when it became clear around March 12th that we didn't, that was the week that there was a public school that closed because of COVID-19, and so we weren't quite sure what the rest of the district was going to do,
Mhm.
but we chose to pull our teaching artists out of classrooms at the end of that week and at least give it the weekend for things to become clearer, and then the next day they canceled school. So that all happened really fast. A lot of our residency programs didn't end. And in terms of like, does the job change? Yes, because suddenly everything I was running ended, and we weren't quite sure. As I think this whole pandemic has been, all the information felt so slow to come out or so conflicting, how shelter in place happened, all of that rolled out slowly, that we weren't quite sure what the community would need in the weeks to come. And some people, and I respect all these different choices, like some people have waited to let that emerge, and we actually went right online and started to kind of pilot some of that, just to put some stuff out into the world, especially to our community of teaching artists, teens, and teachers. And if other people came in, that's great too. And just pilot some stuff with them based on some of their immediate feedback of things they were looking for. So I'm still playing a similar role in that I'm kind of my director of education calls the curriculum captain for these online workshops, which I was doing for the wider program too, but all the virtual part of it and kind of making theater and being participatory in a virtual space has been a big learning curve for me.
Yeah, and I've been for the past couple of weeks. I've been to yours and John Rooney's, and they've both been the nice palate cleansers for me during this time to sort of escape from the world. I haven't. I obviously I don't go to the teen ones, but what was the response like first? Was it hard to get teenagers to come to one of these? Because I would think for a teenager going through a difficult time like everyone else, they wouldn't want to maybe go to a online web class for an hour.
We have almost had more attendance at the teen events than the other online virtual offerings, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. Steppenwolf has a young adult council, so there's already teens that come to us for programming. And the first one that we did, I think the week, whatever the Wednesday was after like March 13th, we had like 150 teens attend, and we kind of similarly were like, teens even want to do this. I know teachers were very nervous about access to computers and motivation to sort of do things online. And immediately in the chat function of Zoom, which we were using, people were like starved for the communication and like communicating with their peers, which was shocking to us. And luckily, so there's 3 people that have been running these online programs. John Rooney, as you mentioned, kind of focuses on early career professionals because in his work, he is running like the internship and apprenticeship programs at Steppenwolf. I'm more for the educators, so people who are arts educators, teaching artists, and classroom teachers. And then a B, they run our young adult council. So I know that they were also having conversation with their teens about what kind of things they were wanting to do. And I think a lot of them were looking to just connect with other people and have some creative making space. And that's how we started this journey a little bit.
Yeah, and that's wonderful, and I'm glad teens are enjoying it and escaping. And it's and I think the work is partial escapism for a lot of people, for teens especially. And for your sake, since you were teaching artists, and now you have this bigger position, and now the job is now sort of evolved a little bit more. Do you miss it at all? Do you miss being a teaching artist, or you're glad of where you're at?
A lot of us in this field wear multiple hats, and so I still have opportunities to teach. So I'm really lucky. I still right now, I've been teaching this past year course at UIC. That's a teaching artist seminar and practicum, and while that's not a teaching artist gig per se, I think if you're an educator and you're in a classroom exercising that skill set, you're kind of filling that need. Right. And I also have led and lead a lot of professional development workshops through different organizations for arts educators and teaching artists specifically. So yes, I miss it and I love the opportunities, but I also really like the administrative side of the work.
Hmm.
And so as long as I have some teaching outlet, and I also, for myself, and this isn't like a recommendation to the world so much as like something I need as Amanda, I feel like I need to do both. Like, if I'm away from students and out of the classroom for too long, I find it very hard to train other teaching artists and arts
Hmm.
educators
Yeah.
because you're kind of that skill set is not in practice.
Yeah, and we talked about it before. I kind of want to figure out the difference for my sake of what I want to teach. Be a teacher, or do I want to be a teaching artist? 'Cause I know there's a bit of a difference.
Yeah, and I think some of those differences are literally going to be person to person definition.
Right.
Because I know people in the field that truly think like if you're not a practicing artist, you can't be a teaching artist. Whereas I know other folks that don't have such a strict guideline for what that means. And so I think that there's this constant debate going on about what a teaching artist is. I mean, there's not necessarily a certification to be a teaching artist,
Right.
and so you're not the same as a person that went to school and got a certificate to be a teacher. Um, but you, I think, have some different insight into the artistic process, and I am a practicing artist, and so that has never been an issue for me specifically. But I think the definition of an artist can be really broad too, and so I have trouble a lot of times putting my finger on what a teaching artist is. But
Hmm.
in my course, for instance, and maybe you did something similar, I have my students work on, in the second half of the course, a teaching philosophy statement that should be connected to their artistic outlook as well. And so I want them to start to think of, like, why do they want to teach? What's important to them in terms of their values when they're teaching? And then how is their work as an artist connected to that? And they don't have to leave with, like, a finished product, but I want them to start to make those connections for themselves because I do think it's deeply personal. And I might not, I know I'm not going to write the same statement as them, and that doesn't mean one person is a teaching artist and one isn't. It just means that you're identifying for yourself what you're bringing to the table, but like also why you're choosing this line of work.
Yeah. And do you think I know, like, I think my philosophy as a teaching artist has changed from when I started it a couple years ago. For you, does that theory or for change at all over the years?
Gosh, I hope so. I think I think for myself, like the part of it that doesn't change yet means constant evolution, if that makes sense, is that I want to be a lifelong learner and I want to co-learn alongside my students. And so I personally am never going to be like, I'm an expert on arts education. I have skills and knowledge and experience to offer, but so do people that are coming into the classroom for the first time. And so I think that that's the part of it that will stay the same always. And I hope, gosh, if I stop feeling that way, I think I personally should stop teaching. But yeah, I do think so much about the world changes, minute to minute, day to day, year to year. A lot about education research, best practices in the field have shifted and evolved in the past, couple decades. So I do think that my philosophy will be responsive to that. It's like I'm more self-aware as I'm more connected to the audiences that I'm engaged with. But maybe there's that little kernel or that core at the center that will always ground me.
For sure. And it's been so interesting doing this whole week dedicated to educators. Everyone who's been on it, whether they've been in theater or I had a Spanish teacher on a couple days ago,
Wow.
they've always said they think of themselves as students as well, And that's been very nice because maybe when I was little, and maybe like every other student, I took a teacher as they know everything. They are in charge. And then when I got to college, I realized, well, wait a minute. They're also students. They're learning about not just me, but they're also learning about the craft as well, and how other younger and different artists and students come in and bring something new. And I'm glad that teachers still do that, and I'm glad they still identify themselves as students as well. I think it's wonderful.
And I think that that's a little bit of a shift that's happened because I'm not sure if you had this conversation with other people, but I bet we all had teachers that operated the way you just described, that were like, I'm the expert, I'm the period at the end of the sentence, like you will learn from me, and I sort of am the well that you're drinking from. And there was a huge frustration I had with that, although I couldn't really articulate it or pinpoint it when I was a young person. And especially going to graduate school and sort of reading more like critical theory on the topic, like I started to see like how that power dynamic was really harmful to education and to young people. And it made sense to me, but I hadn't had like the language for it before that. And so I'm thrilled to hear that because I'm hoping that that's like a huge shift that has happened in the field across the board, whether you're in the classroom every day or you're somebody coming at education from this cultural or nonprofit space.
Yeah, me too. So I kind of want to circle back to the pandemic, and I think what's very interesting for my sake is like an event like this has affected my work, both as an artist and both as a student. As an artist, I wanted to talk about a pandemic, and that's why I started a podcast. When you do these teen webinars and web classes, do you see a shift in their work and how it could be probably affected by a pandemic?
Yeah, something that has come up several times in the past couple weeks of running this program, I've heard it said in different ways by all the different constituent groups that we work with. Like, I think these conditions make you forget that you know how to do things. Like, I know how to be a creator. I know how to be a teacher. I know how to, take care of myself. But there's so many external factors happening that it kind of, at least the first few weeks, really clouded that. Like, I forgot that I knew how to do anything. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's almost like the shock of it. And I felt like I was kind of on this autopilot. I think the uncertainty, I'm a person that, I'm like a Virgo, I'm very type A, so sometimes, like, the ambiguity and uncertainty can be an area of growth for me, like a real challenge. But I think what I have heard or how I've interpreted what I've heard is people being like, oh yeah, like you give me a prompt, I know how to go, one of our teachers, Freddie Ramos, they had people explore a part of their space that they've been in, and they chose not to use the word home because we don't know where people are. Not everybody is in their home. And like reinvent that little corner of your space and re-explore that corner of your space and like reclaim it somehow. And I think for some people it was like, wow, yeah, like I've ignored that room, that door, that, closet. And it was fun to like somehow have a creative engagement with it. Or writing poetry and just being able to like share your work with others and like have a peer community again, of people in a learning space, which is really different than like a social media space when you're all there kind of co-learning together and being creative with a purpose. Not that there isn't purposeful work on social media, but just like when it's an intentional space for that. And so, I don't know, that's like a sentiment I've heard echoed a few times that like, oh yes, like I know how to be creative and like I could generate this on my own. It's just all these conditions I kind of forgot for a moment.
For sure. And I think when I really discovered about myself is when I think I joined the Erica Sanchez session a couple weeks ago. And I've done these writing prompts before in theater classes, and probably when I was
Of
starting
course.
out, I didn't really get it or understand it, or was like, "What is this doing? What am I doing?" And
Yeah.
and I think that was just because like I was taking it from an actor standpoint and not from an artist standpoint, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, and so for taking and then doing that and just taking it as an artist standpoint, I understand a whole lot more than just the acting side of like, oh, I now want to move, or I want to feel different things. Now I want to write things. I wrote something down in that chat and I forgot what it was. But I remember that quote sticking with me for like the rest of the day, and really
Mm.
feeling that, darn, I gotta find that quote now. Um, but yeah, so I'm glad that these classes kind of help change my philosophy from being an actor to an artist. Because I think when I leave college, whenever that's going to be, a couple weeks, May 2021, who knows? Um,
Oh.
I hope that I can leave as an artist and not just an acting major.
And it's actually so lovely to hear you say that because this aesthetic education approach, which we adopted from Lincoln Center in New York about a decade ago at Steppenwolf Education, is truly about like demystifying artistic process. So like I'm very much somebody that probably would usually come to a table and be like, I'm a horrible visual artist, I don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But the way aesthetic education kind of approaches any art form is like you can be curious about anything. Like one of those, I always use the example of like one of those big white canvases at the Art Institute that like most people are
Yeah.
like, nothing's on that, like I could do that. That's like maybe their first reaction.
Oh, for
But
sure.
even if that's your first reaction, you can ask a million questions about that. And so, like, aesthetic education is to get people to be curious. Like, wow, is that one canvas? How did they get that here? How did the artist work with that material? Like, how did they hang it on the wall? Is there paint on it? If there is, what tools did they use to apply it? Like, why is there texture in that corner? And so it sort of takes the judgment out of it, and like you don't even have to be worried about being the maker of it. It's just about asking as many questions. And I find that if you get students asking a lot of questions, they will become curious. Like even if they're just completing it as an exercise at first,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them will then like start to tack on more questions. And it's like questions lead to questions, and then they start to understand what it is to make that big canvas and like what it would take to make that big canvas. And that's all demystified now. It's not about walking into a room, seeing a big white canvas and being like, I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Because and that's, I believe this is kind of part of my philosophy that I don't want there to be that barrier of like, I don't get it, because I do think that that's like a gate that is held from people, like that stops them from being artistic or wanting to engage with the arts. And that's very much been propagated by the artistic systems that we're in. Like it's only for some and not for all. And so I'm hoping that like these workshops, as you're saying, like it's not about like I can be a poet or I can't be. It's more like I can write and be creative and I can find some value in that for my own, like if it's just self-care or for my artistry or just to connect with a couple people today. Like all of those to me are really valid.
Oh, for sure. So as we are wrapping up, three mini questions that I think are going to be very hard.
Okay.
First Steppenwolf show you saw was?
The Pillow Man.
Ooh, good.
Starring Michael Shannon and Jim True Frost, Tracy Letts, and Yasin Piankov. I was an apprentice at Steppenwolf in 2006-07,
Okay.
and I believe that was the first show produced that season.
Okay. Awesome. And your favorite Steppenwolf production was?
Ooh, I think the Brother Sister Play trilogy, the
Mhm.
Brother Sister Plays
Yeah.
trilogy. I saw the original run of that, and it was so beautiful. It just like blew me away in all ways.
Yeah. No, I love those plays. I have a copy of it at home, and it's fantastic. And then last one, favorite advice you've gotten from someone at Steppenwolf.
Hmm. Favorite advice? That's hard. I've known a lot of people over the years. I I don't know if this counts as advice.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it does. I think it does. So when I was there as an apprentice, Erica Daniels was the casting director. She's now at Victory Gardens as the executive director, I believe, or managing director. And I remember as being a young artist and theater maker, well, I'm not necessarily in making theater right now. I make more like kind of avant-garde performance art. But anyway, Erica talking about being a casting director and saying, when someone walks into the room, I want them to succeed. I want them to blow me away. Like, I have that kind of optimism about each person that walks into the room. And that comment has stayed with me, and I think I feel that way about students and, like, teaching artists, that, like, every person I meet, I, like, want to create the conditions that will lead to their success, even if that means I have to shift and change some of the things I'm doing. And so, it's just one of those things that stayed with me for almost, like, 15 years, and, like, really, the older I get, like, rings more true.
That's sorry, you caught you. I just lost. I was like, wow, that's really good. Um, so Amanda, I can't imagine another senior education manager I want to talk to with right now during during a pandemic. So thank you for taking some time to talk with me. This was great. I really do appreciate it.
No, I'm so honored that you asked, and it's been lovely to chat with you a little bit about this. I hope that we can continue to stay in conversation, especially if this is something you're interested in.
Oh, for sure. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening to this episode of You Have a Minute, a daily isolated podcast. My thanks to Amanda Acevedo for coming on the show. A great person. I just met her today and I learned so much about being a teaching artist and the difference between that and trying to have a philosophy for it. I think now because of this interview, I'm going to have to like think back about my philosophy and see if I can think of a new one. If you are interested in learning about these step ed programs, if you YouTube Steppenwolf Theatre, you're going to find some links to some education videos from their web classes they've been doing. Like I said, I've done a few of these and they've been just wonderful to attend and listen to. And if you're interested in more, then have no fear, because in May, Steppenwolf is going to start a Maker May, which is another online workshop for ages 13 and up, and they have a maker challenge. Participants will have a chance to showcase and discuss their work with their featured artists and the whole creative community. So go to steppenwolf.com/education/virtual-workshops to find out about more. As always, wash your hands, wear a mask, let's flatten this curve, stay healthy, and I will see you tomorrow. I will reveal tomorrow's guest. The whole week has been great. I can't wait to do more of these. See you tomorrow.